Good evening, everyone. I'm Sue Hodgen. It is 6 o'clock, and I'm calling our regular planning board meeting for October 19th to order. I'll ask that everyone silence, please, or turn off their cell phones. Let's start, as usual, by removing any hats, and those who can or will, please stand while Donnie gives our invocation, and we'll follow with our allegiance.
Let us pray. All-wise and almighty God, it's once again we like to say thank you for allowing us to gather here this afternoon to conduct the business of the City of Southport's Planning Board. We ask that, Lord, if it be thy will, that we weigh each issue fair and impartial. And when this meeting is over with, we ask that you send your guardian angels with each and every one of us back to our loved ones and keep us safe. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you so much. I'm noting that we have all members present here tonight, and we're welcoming back Kevin with us. We're so glad you're back with us. Moving on with our agenda, item D is the approval of the minutes from our September 21st meeting. Those were issued to the members in advance. Are there any changes or corrections? If not, do I hear a motion to approve those minutes as prepared? And thank you so much. There's a motion on the floor. Any final discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, sirs. Item E is the approval of tonight's agenda. You were also issued this in advance. Are there any additions or corrections to it? Motion to approve? So moved. Second? There's a motion on the floor. Any final discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? It too passes unanimously. Thank you. Item F is public comment. Do I hear a motion to move into public comment? So moved. Second? Second. Thank you. Motion on the floor. Any final discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Also passes unanimously. Thank you. Madam Deputy Clerk, can you call the names of anyone who signed up to speak?
I don't have anyone signed up to speak, but I do have a comment that was submitted. I also gave it to the board to read as well. And this is from Compass Builders from Brian Kimball. Is that very loud? And he says, I agree with amending text in the UDO concerning equipment such as AC and generator units. This has not been enforced since it was first installed in the UDO and also allowed prior to. There are many very new buildings on non-conforming lots that have AC units, gas tanks, etc. in their 4-foot or less setbacks. Like, for example, Clarendon Avenue on Wright between 8th and 9th Streets. These builds both maxed out the space on the lots, the 33-foot lots. I see an issue with a neighboring lot not being afforded the same convenience. The build I completed next door was also allowed AC and generator inside 8-foot setbacks. I also have a generator for my personal property. It is inside setbacks by 1 foot. The volume is still loud when it is running in my house, as well as my neighbors running. The noise is a non-issue to me when a lot of neighbors have them as well. Power versus noise during disasters is a no-brainer. What will keep someone that has a portable unit from placing it on the side of their home when it is needed? Living in a hurricane-prone area requires some kind of understanding of what it takes to do without power for extended periods of time. On confirming lots with 8-foot setbacks, I see no issue with either a generator or HVAC units up to 5 foot in setbacks, since the UDO allows steps to do so. I disagree with a comment that was made by a member of the board stating that individuals coming here owning property outside of a subdivision plan unit development need not expect new builds. It seems to me someone who has money and resources could challenge the city in court if told that they were not allowed to build like the neighboring property on a 33-foot lot. Property prices in our city are higher than ever, so it is natural for people to want the most for their purchase. When the Swassey additions were platted at 33 foot, the purpose was to provide as many folks an opportunity to buy property in a neighborhood close to the river. That cannot be corrected in 2023. Thank you for your time on the planning board. Please reach out to me if you have any questions.
Tanya, I want to back up on one of those, you jumped over a line, Shug, let me just read that sentence in totality there. I disagree with the comment that was made by a member of the board stating that individuals coming here owning property outside of a subdivision or PUD need not expect being able to maximize the use of their property when you can see this has not been an issue prior and has been allowed for a lot of new builds. Thank you, Tanya, for that, and we'll include those in the minutes. And we thank Mr. Kimball for sending that in. Is there anyone here that did not sign up to speak but would like to address the board? Okay, we thank everyone for their participation and interest in our processes in any event. Do I hear a motion to end the public comment period? And a second? Thank you. Motion on the floor. Any final discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Passes unanimously, and we are out of public comment. Moving on to item G, old business. We have one item of old business, a requested text amendment for UDO section 3.9, setback exceptions and encroachments. Mo, you are on. Would you like to give us an update and staff's report on this? And folks, we're on page 7 of our packets.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. Tonight, again, you will see this is the text amendment that has been submitted by Cameron Smith, the applicant. He is specifically requesting to amend section 3.9B5, which is the setback exception and encroachment, to modify the maximum setback encroachment for heating and air conditioning units, generators, pool equipment, and other similar items from 30 inches to 48 inches. So this is the verbiage that was submitted that we have seen before. And tonight I wanted to go through a couple examples of some real life instances that we've seen this happen. So I'm going to show you 2 examples of conforming properties that have a lot that is less than 10,000 square feet and have met the 30-inch encroachment that is existing in the UDO. So this property, as you see, I hope you can see, is a smaller lot. The units are outside of the setback, but the setback for this property is 6 feet. So the home is 11 feet in. So then there's the generator, the HVAC, and the screen itself is within the encroachment and probably just meet the setbacks at 6 feet anyway. And you'll see here, this is the screen. So a lot of these properties that have been built also have landscaping around them. So you don't notice them a lot of times because of the smaller lots where they're located and the matured landscaping that is coming around and the screening that they've done. So that's one example of a conforming one. Another one, this is on Lord Street, and this is a 33-foot lot. It is built, it has 4-foot setbacks on the sides. It meets the 25-foot front, and then it had a reduced rear, but it didn't need it. But this particular person installed low-profile units to be able to meet the 30-inch encroachments, so you'll see. Oh, I don't know where my pointer went. So again, you don't notice them directly from the street because of the landscaping, but if you come over here, you'll see 2 units here for the first and second floor that they made provisions for when they found out they had to meet that 30-inch encroachment. So here are some other examples of those that are encroaching on smaller lots that don't meet the 30-inch. So if you didn't know that they weren't encroaching more than 30 inches, I don't know if you would know on some of these smaller lots. Here you can see a propane tank and a generator. This right here is their fence line, so that's going to be their property line. This particular one, it has 2 units, both encroaching here. This unit almost meets it, it's just a couple inches off, and then this one is definitely well within the setback itself. And they are staggered, so you can still get between them. This is just an example I saw recently. And then here is another one with just regular standard units. The lot next door is vacant, so it's not, you can't really tell when you're standing there as well. So those are just some examples that we have. This is another one that shows where the house is at 6.5 feet, and so these units did not meet the setback, but again, the way that it has been landscaped, and you can see that you can't even see the units there at all. But also you can see that there is room. This pointer is interesting. There is room here that the foundation could have been pushed over a little bit, and then it could have met those. So just some examples of those. What is real life examples that staff are encountering on a daily basis. So unless you have any questions, some options that are to keep the language as written, the 30-inch encroachment. There was the 48-inch encroachment that the applicant has proposed, and/or we did speak at the last meeting about having the 30-inch encroachment or 50% of the setback, whichever is greater, just to give a little bit more flexibility for a property owner without going all the way to 48-inch, so it wouldn't be on the property line with the 4-foot setbacks. So I will leave it there for any discussion or questions that you may have for me.
Before I open it up to everybody else, back up 2 slides for
Yes,
me,
ma'am.
please. Turquoise house. Mm-hmm. Is that still a vacant lot beside it?
Yes, I took these pictures today.
That's a recent picture?
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
okay. Okay, we'll open it up for discussion, folks.
Mo, do you have any idea how many new constructions there are with HVAC encroachments?
A lot. I don't know, I don't have a number, but I would say that since this provision was added in 2020, there are, I would say, hundreds. It's more, or it's probably, I would say it's more often than not that there is an encroachment.
In the last 2 or 3 years, do we have records about violations? Are there records in City Hall about violations of this?
We would have to go through each individual building permit and look. It was not enforced.
So if I remember, the applicant said that units could be 48 inches by 48 inches. You remember that? I think it even says it in his notes.
So the unit itself would be 48 inches. Is that what you're asking?
So even if it was 3 feet, which I measured one the other day, and it was 36 by 36, I know they can be bigger than that. But if you have a non-conforming lot with 4-foot setback, you have a 36-inch unit, and then the manufacturer is requiring 1 to 2 feet, depending on the manufacturer. Well, that puts it right on the line.
Yes, it does. And that is the reason why this has come forward, to accommodate those larger units.
So it seems to me that if the applicant wanted to do that, he could certainly design his footprint with a niche in it, 2 feet or 3 feet into his footprint to allow for that equipment if he wanted to.
Yes.
I think we should be dealing, I don't think we need to take the lots that have 8-foot setbacks and impose a restriction on them because we have non-conforming lots. Generally, residentially, the units aren't larger than 36 inches. A 5-ton unit, which is pretty big, is usually 36 by 36. 4-foot units, you're talking commercial that may be 10-ton units or like that. So in residential, I don't think 48's an issue. The industry standard seems to be about 18 inches of setback off the house. A lot of them are worded that say you have to have workable space, and most, I don't know about here, but most inspectors enforce 18 inches. If they won't let the guys put them 12 inches because they don't have enough room to work. So generally you're looking at 54 inches to get that unit in. So in 8 feet, if we came up with an amount like 3 feet that they have to stay 3 feet off the line, then that lets everybody in the 8-foot setback zones use the setback for their units. Now, I agree that when you have a 4-foot setback and you go put a 3-foot unit in there, then you could be generating some issues. So I think we need to word it to where the regular sized lots with at least an 8-foot setback don't get hindered, and they can't do that, where, as you said, it's getting done anyway, and that's not a reason to do it. Keep continuing, but if you leave 3 feet on the line, that's plenty. People can get by. At least that's the way I see it.
We are talking about these 33-foot lots on the west side, am I correct?
This would be for any lot within the city that can be developed.
Okay. But the one with the biggest problems are the 33-foot lots.
Yes, and there are also some PUDs that have lots that are less than 10,000 square feet that this would affect as well.
And we're talking about side setbacks, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to jump Mo and I'm sorry. Were you getting ready to say? Roy, I'm sorry. I know you are. You noted in the report, Mo, that you had checked with Wes at the COG, and he confirmed that 30 inches is the standard encroachment in our region. And you mentioned that, let's see, you did some other research, and I think it mentioned looking at other cities. Can you tell us whatever other towns you checked for this?
I don't remember off the top of my head. I tried to keep them within North Carolina, but there were some that were out of state.
May I? Yes. I'm reading from what Mr. Wes McLeod with Cape Fear COG confirmed. 30 inches is a standard encroachment throughout the region for these types of units. And I'm just quoting, further independent research found examples that allow HVAC and other units 30 inches or a 50% encroachment of the setback, whichever is greater. which is interesting. And that allows the encroachment of stoops for air conditioning, but the stoop can only be large enough to accommodate the unit. And there's some examples of 48 inches in other coastal areas. I think that sums up every city seems to have their own needs looked at. And Southport's no different. These 33-foot lots are very interesting because they all are below, they're all non-conforming, correct? So every 33-foot lot is
Well,
non-conforming.
Not, I would say a majority of them are. I wouldn't say it's a true statement that every single one is.
Okay, but a 33-foot lot to have 10,000 square feet has got to be like 300 feet deep. And there are very few in this town that are 300 feet deep.
There are a couple on the river.
33-foot lots are usually well below 10,000 square feet, and people love them. And I am trying to understand, this is for all residences in R10, correct? Conforming, like we've just had mentioned, that there's plenty of room, but the non-conforming lots, the old ones back from the 30s, and the new ones that suddenly are being, having enforcement put on them, are the problems. And I have gone through this mathematics so many times. I am no longer a mathematical genius. But if it's a 6,000 square foot lot, and that's the example that's in the UDO, okay, so I'm using that straight, it proportionally, the setbacks are reduced. So 6,000 versus 10,000, that's 40% less. So, please help me here, because I'm going through this. So that means an 8-foot setback, which is there, loses 3.2 feet, which is, so it ends up with a 4.8 foot setback, which is 58 inches. And if we allowed 48-inch encroachment, that leaves only 12 inches between the setback, the encroachment and the property line. So at this point, to me, it becomes a concern for safety as much as anything, because they could have two side by side, and that would leave 12 inches. And with landscaping and fencing and everything else, there's no way anybody emergency could go between these two lots. And that starts my concern about public safety, fire, EMS, whatever, trying to get to the back. So the non-conforming lots, to me, are the real issue here. And I don't know if anybody agrees with that or not, but, and most of those 33-foot, okay, thank you. Most of these 33 lots are, I will say almost every one of them are non-conforming. So we could end up with 12 inches. And that doesn't even include the 12-inch, if it's a 48-inch unit, that doesn't even include the 12 inches from the house to the unit, plus 48 inches. That means the units, all these units could be set right on the property line under this situation. I don't think anybody, I speak for myself, excuse me, I just don't see that as a valid safety situation. When with you, and the problem is, and I've read Mr. Kimball's letter, and I understand what he's saying here, that there's so many of these houses that have been built that how can you tell the next person that they can't do it? But at some point, I think you've got to just say, from now on, this has got to be corrected. And so I'm looking at this from a public safety standpoint, access standpoint. It's going to affect non-conforming lots, and it's the older 33-foot lots, and now, unfortunately, it's affecting some brand-new PUDs, which were apparently planned and laid out, that really a 30-inch encroachment is not enough. So it's affecting those two groups of the R10s and the PUDs. Is that correct? I mean, so PUDs are part of this problem. And will this cover PUDs also?
It will cover any residential
Any
zoning.
residential, okay. So this is tough. But I'm just, you know, we got a big mixture of lots in this town. And again, I don't care what anybody says, there's a tremendous pressure for larger houses on smaller lots. It's just what happens when we become the happiest and friendliest town on the coast in the United States. And there's massive pressure on it. And I think we've got to look at this and say, we've got a 30-inch encroachment. Some cities don't even have that. I know some cities and some neighborhoods have 0 encroachments allowed, which means smaller houses. Somebody said a setback, perhaps, a cutout in that section of the house so the units do not push out right to the property line. And I just think that it's now a matter of we've got to draw that line in the sand and say, yeah, a lot of things went on, but can we continue letting them happen? And can we make the encroachment even more, from 30 inches to 48 inches? So those are my thoughts. I'm going to withhold what I think until everybody's had their say, but that's where I'm looking at.
Well, we're not in public comment. Is this your application?
No, it's germane to the gentleman's conversation. I'm a builder here in Southport.
If you'll come to the front, come up to the podium, please, sir, so we can get it recorded. If you'd state your name, please, and your address for the record.
Yeah, my name is Tom Dugan.
Hit the button so that your mic is on.
Oh, here we go. My name's Tom Dugan. I live at 522 East Moore up the street here, and I build the hurricane houses in the town here. I just wanted to add some information. The new higher efficient condenser units, the outside units, the last ones I've put in, 2 and 3 ton, are all 36 by 36. They're increasing the amount of coil to make them more efficient with the multi-speed pumps. So the direction is not bringing them smaller, but they're actually growing in order to make them more energy efficient. I just wanted to let you know that 36 by 36 has become quite the norm.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you doing that. Cam, would you like to come up and address everybody?
Okay. It seems like the main concerns I'm hearing are safety and non-conforming lots and the units being too close to the property line. What about adding to the provision that the units cannot be any closer than 2 feet to the property line? That would give the non-conforming, it would make it a little more difficult for the non-conforming lots to, but that would alleviate some of the concerns about units being possibly too close to the property line. If you use the 2-foot rule, now the closest that 2 units could be to each other would be 4 feet, which is plenty of room to get in and work and do whatever you want to between houses. That's a thought. I mean, keep the 48 inches. I mean, the 48 inches could be slightly reduced. I mean, there could be a compromise there. The reason I use 48 inches is because of what Tom just said. The units are 36. They have to be a foot off the house, and generators end up having to be 48 inches off the house because of their setbacks as well. So that's how I came up with the 48-inch number. You know, if that were knocked down to 42 or something like that, I think it would still work. But maybe there's some kind of a compromise. It may be the 2 foot rule. That would keep some of the safety concerns, some of the things that I'm hearing you all say. Maybe that would help that. Does that make sense?
I'm still on. A minimum distance between property line and any on-ground utility makes a lot of sense to me. Is it 2 feet? I mean, that's something to be discussed, but certainly
so what I'm-
2
yeah.
feet minimum. And right now, with a 36-inch unit, and I'm looking at a 33-foot lot, not
Right.
yours.
Right.
It's right up against the property line. So whatever we're doing, we may be saying that these footprints on these 33-foot lots are going to have to be rethought before they're submitted to a building permit. This is Southport, okay?
Yeah.
So we're trying to figure it out, but that certainly
So what I-
would be
Yeah,
a
I'm just-
possible move.
It is an adder into the text amendment using the 24-inch. We mentioned it before, and I think that's a good compromise, and it might alleviate some concerns. Anyway, I thought I would add that.
Thank you. That's
Yeah.
worth thinking.
Thank you, Cam. Can you turn that mic back off for us? Thank you. We have to watch for not overloading our poor little system here. Other comments?
Yeah, Sue, in looking at this, and I'm new to Southport, 7 years, and I have a non-conforming lot, and I know what they did on my lot. As you went further back, they indented the house in so they could place the HVAC unit so it would be within the guidelines. And I think this comes down to you're asking to make an amendment, and I think anytime you make an amendment, it has to be serious. It can't be because people did not enforce it in the past. The sins of your brother shouldn't be the reason for a change. The question is, what's best for the community as we move forward? And I think under these circumstances, you're talking about 2 select groups. The amendment as proposed covers everything. I think it's overly broad. And I think building ingenuity should be put into place rather than changing having a text amendment, considering safety as eloquently stated. And also, I've known cases where you have houses on the property line, literally on the property line, and a neighbor threatened workmen that they couldn't walk on their property to get to the units when it's that close. So there's a myriad of dangers that people don't think about that exist in today's society. And I think if there's other ways for the builders to bring in the generators, the HVAC, and figure out a way to do that, and I think Mr. Fiss has done that on a number of houses. I don't know what other builders are doing, but I think in the future we have to look at what's best overall and not what's been done. Thank you.
So I agree with Roy, what you're saying, because if I want to put up a fence right at the property line and there's no room to get past the unit now on a 33-foot wide lot, that doesn't make sense. So it doesn't work in these 33-foot wide lots. There's options to place the equipment behind the house, and it makes perfectly good sense on an 8-foot setback as it's written, but I agree.
Mo, I'm going to ask you to clarify something before I go further in my own comments about this. Will you look at 4.15E in the UDO? It's item 5. It's 4-12, page 4-12. I'm sorry. I'm shocked you just can't quote this. It's page 4-12. It's 4.15E, and I want you to look at item 5. It's 4.15, item E5.
Okay.
Gotcha?
Yep.
Okay. Explain that to me. Because it talks about 8 and 6 feet.
So side yard setback, not less than 8 feet. Dwellings which do not utilize zero lot line provisions shall maintain a minimum side setback of not less than 6 feet. Do not utilize the zero lot line.
Aren't these all dimensional standards for planned unit developments, though?
They are.
Subdivisions?
Yes, they are.
So they wouldn't apply. So
It wouldn't apply to just existing platted lots, no.
Okay. Okay.
This is for new land subdivision.
Okay. So I'm going to throw another kink in all of this, and then I'm going to get to my bottom line here. This talks about eaves as well, allowing 30 inches into a setback. So when builds would be allowed to be done line to line, setback to setback, and you got a 30-inch eave sticking out, and we have one, we're not even talking Florence, we're talking a hard torrential rainstorm like we can have, then some of these lots are virtually going to be drowning each other in the rain that's going to be coming at each other off of it. Something else to think about in all this when we consider how close we're allowing everything to be, that we can be just inundating each other's lots doing this. To Brian Kimball's comments, I would say too, when this has been allowed before, back then, the lots didn't have AC units to put on. Nobody had air conditioning. And that was before HVAC and generators were commonplace. I'm in alignment with Kevin on this to say, as I did at last month's meeting, just because something's not been enforced properly as it should have been, there's no reason to overlook it now from this point on. I'm still not convinced that we should be changing code that was updated just 3 years ago because builders want to let owners go line to line without the builders advising them of the ordinance and what they must adhere to. And I get that owners want what they want, but if there's town ordinance covering it, then I guess I go back to again, in agreement with Kevin, I keep going back to 3 words: make it work with the ordinance. Why are we continuing to have applications come to us that want to bend everything to make it easier for the builders or easier for the owners? We're supposed to be seeing to the benefit of every lot, everybody in town. And if it can't be worked out, there is relief through the Board of Adjustments. And I know, rightfully so, Mo, you've got in here that we're looking at the consistency with the Land Use Plan in Policy 2.4. I don't think we're not standing in the way of market needs if we leave it as is. Building can take place just within the bounds of the UDO. So for me, I don't see any reason to change this. when we've got provisions to make it work, to have relief if it's not working. And as I say, with builders anticipating PUDs or smaller developments come up with a portfolio of PUD designs, homes that would fit on the PUD lots. Again, making it work. We've got talented builders in this town that can make this work if that's really their desire to do that. My 2 cents. What other comments?
I agree on your comment about the 30 inches, an extension of a roof line, 30 inches out. That doesn't leave much room on these conforming lots. So it really ought to be something like 3 feet from the property line minimum, which that would make 6 feet between 2 roofs. And so if there's a roof pitch that's shooting water over towards this house and vice versa, that's not good. So I don't know anybody that around town that's doing 30-inch eaves, but an architect could certainly design the house that's gabled to the side with a 1-foot overhang versus 30 inches. But that seems like something that wasn't well thought out for these non-conforming lots.
Well, I think the drip line is getting a little off base of what I mean, it's an issue, but it's not the issue we're dealing with right now. How much overhang the house has, you know, with the encroachment into the setback of units. I think we could, for conforming lots that have an 8-foot setback, that we can come up with a distance from the line that that equipment can come into the setback. Again, I don't think we need to penalize lots that conform with 8-foot setbacks because we have lots that only have 4 foot. If you come up with a distance, whether it's 2 foot or 3 foot, whatever it is, that's reasonable, then lots that have a 8-foot setback can still utilize that area and stay off the line far enough that you can get by and it's not a hazard. You know, if you're 3 feet or 42 inches off the line, that's a lot different than Roy's talking about being within a foot of the line, and if they're back to back, you can't get through there. That's not exactly the same. So I agree with that. You can't shut off, because if there's a fence there, then you don't have both of them. You just have your area to get by. So anyway, I think we should work back from the line and have some area there that can be used when you have 8 feet or more.
I use the example of a 6,000 square foot lot that's non-conforming. A lot of these 33-foot lots are probably less than 5,000 square feet, which means that side setback would go from 8 feet to 4 feet. So it seems that the non-conforming lots, and particularly those that Southport has inherited, is really a problem, because figure a 33-foot lot, it's 5,000 square feet. How deep is that going to be? 100 and some feet deep, 150? My math is gone. But it'd be real logical to have a non-conforming lot with a 4-foot setback. And then you're going to talk about 30 inches already that they're allowed to build in that setback. So that's 2.5 feet of 4 feet. So that's only 1.5 feet right there. And if 48 inches just doesn't work. And maybe it needs to be a minimum distance set in here that no utility, et cetera, can be within X number of feet of a property line, which was mentioned. I don't think any of us want to see HVACs button up to each other, which this could allow. It's bad enough with a 30-inch encroachment right now. And I'm looking at the worst scenario because that's what's going to come back and bite the town. I think those that are, that 10,000 square feet with the normal setbacks and all, then I don't think does anybody believe that's the problem. It's those unique ones that we have all over town because of our history.
I'm with Cameron, and I think setting a minimum from the lot line makes sense. So as it's written right now with no changes, if we're 30 inches into the encroachment, that leaves 18 inches on the 4-foot setbacks. If we recommend what is underlined here, but then rather add in a comma, but no closer than 18 inches to the property line, it doesn't change the 4-foot setback, what they can and can't do there. But it does allow, I think to Scott's point, it does allow people with 6- and 8-foot setbacks to have a little bit more wiggle room. But again, if we change it and we put in 18 inches minimum from the property line, it is no different than what's currently in there now. And I think we're here to discuss what's presented. I think sort of getting into the conversation of like what we should change it to is obviously for a later day, or I think to Scott's point, maybe instead of 48 inches, it's 36 inches or 42 inches with a minimum of 2 feet from the property line. I'm not a builder, so I can't really speak on what's appropriate,
But the math doesn't add up for a 4-foot setback.
Cameron, in your case, is it a 6-foot setback lot you're dealing with, or is it a 4-foot setback?
I'm not building on 33-foot wide lots. I'm building on 8-foot setbacks, 6-foot setbacks, 5-foot setbacks. I mean, floods, even the 10-foot setbacks in the landing. This is still an issue with any of them. Just because of the equipment size and yes, I can design a house that works. That's not the question. No question about that. But is it?
Well, I don't think you're hearing about the problems because every builder's been doing it, and so everybody else is saying, okay, well, if they can do it, I'm going to do it over here too. So, but at some point, to Roy's point earlier, we need to get to a point of saying ordinance is ordinance, and we're going to enforce them. If we can work something out to where it helps, but even at that point, it's got to be enforceable. That's got to work for us. But we need to do it so that we're not ending up reaching through each other's windows and shaking hands or exchanging coffee in the morning. Just to be able to, for everybody that's wanting to build, to be able to go all the way to the edges of their lots and take up every piece of dirt that's on a lot to put the house on. I know, not meaning anything derogatory towards anyone that's wanting to build, but our job is not to reduce inconveniences to property owners. We're supposed to be here to see to the best interest of town and to see that the ordinances are taking care of that and then enforced. It sounds to me like we have more work to do on this and more discussion to be made, maybe taking some of the conversation in for changing. I mean, we're not going to sit here and rewrite it for Mo. To look into everything. Is everybody in agreement that we're not ready to settle this? Is that what I'm hearing? Pretty much, yes.
Is it possible, Mo, to come up with, say, 3 different versions or 4 different versions that have different, essentially, math on them so that we can kind of look and compare and contrast? And I think just one version may not work for everyone, but trying to find some options that maybe we can talk through. Maybe that's the next revision.
I think that's reasonable, and then being able to discuss those options, Mo. Will that work?
Yes, and I was going to ask, are there any scenarios you would like to see other than, obviously, I'm presenting what the applicant has proposed. Are there any solutions you see you would like to see, like the 2 feet with, then make it, like, just so that I know something besides just me going back. So if there's any direction you can give me, I'm happy to accept it.
Chris, you want to put what you were talking
Yeah, so
about out
option
there?
number 1, I like having, rather than not more than 48 inches, have that to be not more than 42 inches into a required setback, comma, but no closer than 24 inches from the property line. Because that will protect all 4-foot setbacks, and there will not be a single change to any of those lots.
Yeah, but that policy is not needed on a house with an 8-foot setback. So if you're rewriting it to allow it 2 feet from the property line, that's saying that somebody with an 8-foot setback can, I don't know why they would, but they could push it out.
So I think somebody with an 8-foot property line can push with the option that I verbalized that would allow them to push it 12 inches further into the setback, which doesn't seem like an issue, but maybe I'm misspeaking.
So the thought I mentioned earlier, that if somebody needs to buy a foot to make their equipment work, to do a 1-foot niche into their footprint, let's say it's 1 feet deep, maybe it's 2 feet deep, 6 feet wide, that's only 6 square feet or 12 square feet out of the footprint. And if it's a 2-story house, they can cantilever out above that on the 2nd story. So there are ways you can work around that.
Add to that is to leave it at the 30-inch encroachment with no closer than, and I'm going to leave it open right now, 2 to 3 feet from the property line. I think that's one of them we're looking at. So that's really 2. We're looking at 42 inches. I mean, this 48 inches has been requested. If you're saying 42 and I'm saying, all right, just for argument's sake, well, we keep it where it is and only add that no encroachment can be closer than 2 feet to the property line as an option, and leave it like it is with that caveat in there. Would that cover everything we're talking about?
So that's basically 3 options that are gonna be written up as it is right now, what's been presented, then with this text and adding no closer than 3 feet, and then one other going 42 inches and no closer than 24 inches to the line. Got that, Mo? Okay. And then you'll be able to speak to us about what that could actually do. I don't know if we can actually come up with some drawings that would show that, or if we can find examples again around town to be visual with it. So with that said, and I think we're kind of in consensus on this, do I hear a motion that we set aside this submitted text amendment for additional review?
So moved.
Is there a second? I'll second. Motion is on the floor, gentlemen. Any final discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. It was a good discussion. Appreciate that. Okay, we are moving on. We get past these comments, and we're to item H, new business. 3 items on our agenda. Mo, you got comfortable shoes on tonight? I hope so. First one is a text amendment for section 3.12 driveways. This is page 17 of your packets. Mo, staff report, please.
Yes. This is a text amendment to section 3.12B2 driveways. And this was brought forward by a recommendation by the Board of Adjustment for staff to bring this forward for this proposal. It's specifically, the request is to amend this section of the driveways and then the section 3.12 overall to exempt single-family and 2-family dwelling units from the regulations. So this would, right now, as it is written, the section says, before a zoning permit is issued for the construction, reconstruction, or change in use of any buildings or land, period. Construction, reconstruction, or change in use refers to those. The proposal is to put the language used for purposes other than a single or 2-family residence. All driveways shall be reviewed and approved by the UDO administrator or his or her designee. This exception has been in earlier versions of the UDO. And during the 2020 update, for some reason, it was removed. When you look at all of the provisions for the driveway section, it's very hard for any single family or dual family residents to meet these specifications. It seems to be very obvious that it was not meant to be for these. It's not I mean, you could, but they're very strict. Specifically, there was a variance that had to come through for a driveway that could not meet the setback from the side, 10-foot setback from the side lot line. And also, one of the provisions is, in no case may the total width of all driveways exceed 50% of the total property frontage. So I have a couple of different examples here. And then another one is 2 driveways entering from the same street from a single lot shall be permitted only if the minimum distance between the closest edges of the driveways equals or exceeds 50 feet. So I have 3 examples of several of these different standards that are within this. So if you will take a look at this far one, this house here is a double, this is an elevated home. It has two garages, so it has two separate driveways so that you can have less impervious surface here. It cannot meet the 50 feet between the two drives at all. And further, this drive here on the left-hand side that for me is less than the 10 feet that would be required. This middle example also does not meet the 10 feet from the side setback, and it is on a cul-de-sac, so it has a reduced front lot line that it goes out, as you will, and it did not meet the 50% width standard that had to be met here. And this lot is just an example of this is a existing property. These two are new builds that have come in. This one is existing, as you can see. This is a lot that is downtown. So this is an older home with a driveway that comes onto the side, and it obviously cannot meet the 10 feet as well, I believe. So that the frontage here is 58 feet for that property itself. So these are some examples of what we're finding, what we're coming up, seeing, and just wanted to open this up for some conversation. If any questions you may have, the Board of Adjustments were concerned that they were going to see a lot of variances, and that this isn't the type of variance. You don't want to keep the variances coming through for situations like these. So that is really all I have for this evening, but I'm happy to answer any questions or help with any of the discussion if necessary.
Has it always been 10 feet? It's a setback?
There has never been a setback until 2020.
That seems large to me.
Yes, so this section never never intended, it was always an exclusion for single family or a duplex property. So any multifamily projects would have to meet these. It obviously would be a larger lot in most cases for a multifamily project. So if you take a look at it, let's say you have a detached garage that's under 530 square feet, you only have to be set off your property line 5 feet. You cannot get a driveway there because it will not meet the 10-foot setback, correct? So there's a lot of different things that come into play that it doesn't follow the rules of the other, it's inconsistent with other portions of the UDO.
Do we know why do you have any thoughts? Do we check with the COG? Do we know why this was changed or taken out earlier?
I did speak with Wes. He did not have any insight of why it was removed. He just had the different drafts where it had been deleted. I guess we could go back through some of the old planning board minutes if we needed to. But he did not have any specific notes, and I found Thomas's old UDO with the different renditions of the updates as well, and there were no notes on that as well. It was just the struck language, not a single thing.
So the way the UDO used to be written, would I be required to have any kind of setback for a driveway?
No, the way that I have brought this forward for the proposed language for the Board of Adjustment is exactly how it was written in previous UDOs. So there would not be a setback, no.
So the problem seems to relate more to cul-de-sacs than anything. Is that pretty much right in thinking?
No, I think it's effective on all lots because of the setback you have for homes. You have a garage that can be set back, an attached garage can be 8 feet from your, have a setback of 8 feet. A detached garage under 530 square feet can be 5 feet from the lot line. So there's a lot more than just the cul-de-sac. The cul-de-sac is one portion of it for the, I think more for the width of the driveways themselves, but I think this, it's more than just those. It definitely would be a lot of different residential lots.
Were these all recently approved with no comments about being closer than 10 feet to the property line? And what I'm getting at is that just being one item is not being enforced and suddenly it got caught on one? Because I recognize one of those that's been built in, and maybe two of them two of them in new construction, maybe all three of them in new construction, but I've been involved.
These two are new construction. These are two new construction. This one just received a variance to be built. This one, that is going to be coming forward for a variance if this is not changed. And this is just, like I said, an older site plan that came in for a separate permit, but this was existing.
I don't think you can build in Southport with a driveway 10 feet from the property line hardly. So maybe that needs to be done away with.
So with the variance that was given, what was allowed? Were they allowed to go to 0?
No, they were able to keep the setback that they had proposed, that they had on the site plan.
Which is what?
I believe it was close to 15. I'm sorry, I don't have that measurement off the top of my head right now. But I think it was closer to 15 feet. Or 5 feet, rather, I apologize.
The language that you have for, can we not move that down into the driveway location bit? So from the sounds of it, there are 6 different sort of requirements for the location, one of them being the 10-foot currently setback. Can we not move the residential exclusion there so the other 5 items still apply to residential? Or would your text amendment then make all of those driveway locations?
This text amendment would exempt any single-family or two-family home from any of those driveway standards.
So it is possible to move that down, though, I guess is my question.
You can. I guess the more appropriate place is where it is proposed, just for the way that the ordinance is built, because there are other standards like 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 all have those. So but also, if you'd like me to take it back and look at that, I'd be more than happy to.
I was just curious, I guess, more than anything.
I guess I'm just trying to wrap it into my brain that we're not making too big of a brush stroke. That would be something, again, that's citywide. If there's particular instances, particular circumstances that we could address to take care of those type, rather than changing it, again, making it citywide, a swath. I wrote this down, the impact on driveways for single and two-family homes if accessory dwellings are approved and additional parking is required. How would that be handled by?
Accessory dwellings are not allowed to have a separate drive or entrance. It has to use the main entrance to the,
They'd
yes.
still be using that main one.
Correct.
And is there something else that would keep somebody from basically putting a concrete pad along the front property line and using that for their parking? I know we don't want to say right away, do we?
Actually, there are instances where, for non-conforming lots that are under 10,000 square feet, parking is not required on site. So parking is allowed to be on the right-of-way. And you are allowed to have your driveway cross the right-of-way.
Was there a conscious decision to say, let's exclude it, rather than taking the 10-foot and making it 5-foot?
If you change the 10-foot to 5-foot, it would change the setback for non-residential uses or multifamily uses.
How much does it affect, like a garage behind the house? In instances now, they're driving their driveway, maybe not on the property line, but certainly within 10 feet. And I got I don't remember this being, obviously it was, but I don't remember discussion about that. John, were you on the board then when we did that? The revision of when the UDO was rewritten? Yes, I was on the planning. I thought so. Do you remember specifically changing that?
John Allen, 752 Indigo Village Court. I have to say that I do not recall. I mean, there were a million details like this that 4 years later, I'm sorry, but I do not. I mean, we obviously, the revision of the UDO was, it was like major reconstructive surgeries. I mean, it's not, I don't think at all unexpected that, it was so out of date that it's not unexpected that some things kind of fell through the cracks or didn't get all buttoned back up properly, honestly.
I just remembered, like, there was just, I can't remember how long it took, but it was just so much information that we went over, and I can see that sliding through, but if we had discussed it like we are now, I don't think we would have made that change. I don't remember that discussion, so I'm thinking, that I don't know how. I'm not saying somebody slid it through trying to get it, but we just weren't aware of it.
Well, I'll also add that I don't remember it either. We were doing a lot of stuff, and because of health standards, we had to do a lot of stuff on Zoom. So there was a lot of stuff that either couldn't be heard, or it could have slipped through, but I don't remember it personally myself.
There's also a lot of it that Wes McLeod kind of went through and and tried to sort of again bring it up to date, because we had so many odd situations in there, because Southport is very unique, and we have to have some things that are unique. But there was a lot of stuff in there that had been in there since the 70s, and nobody really knew where it came from, or sometimes exactly what it was trying to do. And a lot of times I think he'd find that stuff and he'd come back to us and ask us, why is this here? Do we need to keep it? And, honestly, it just happened so many times that we missed one, more than likely.
Question. If we get rid of this 10-foot setback and try to change it to something else, like being a good neighbor, 2 feet or 3 foot for planting or landscaping between two houses, so between two driveways, there'd be 4 feet or 6 feet separating them instead of butting concrete up to concrete. What would that involve? Just saying instead of 10 feet, it would be a smaller dimension?
I think you would have to write a new standard specifically for residential. I think that trying to change the 10 feet would be detrimental to the non-residential setback for the driveway. Their parking lot has to be set back 10 feet. So I think there's a lot of different pieces to this puzzle that this is also for non-residential use.
But the old UDO, it just had the omitted single and two-family. Is that right?
Yes, as presented is exactly how it was written verbatim.
Any other comments or questions for Mo? And what's the board's pleasure on this? Speak up, folks. What shall we do? Are we ready to act on it? Other items to consider? You want to think on it some more and return it? You want to table it?
It seems reasonable to me, but I think maybe we should give it another thought, and then maybe come to a vote next time, because we may be overlooking something tonight.
Would you like to make that motion, sir, to table this?
Can I add one more note? The options bit, I think, seems like a great idea, pulling from the first point or topic. Could we have this as is for consideration, and then another version that has maybe 10 foot for residential and 2 or 3 feet for, I'm sorry, the other way around. 10 foot for commercial and 2 to 3 feet for residential. Because I think to Roy's point, there would be, I just think that would be a nice addition, rather than just letting it go to 0.
Do you foresee any problems writing that up, Mo, going in that direction? Any other options to present for staff to look into? And okay, then I go back again to Mr. Fiss. Would you like to make a motion to set this aside, the submitted text amendment, for additional review?
Yes, I would. So moved.
There's a motion and a second. It's on the floor. Any final discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, gentlemen. And Mo. Our next item is a text amendment to Table 3.1, Table of Uses, Mixed Use in Highway Commercial Zoning. It's page 22 in your packets. And Ms. Meehan.
This is again, another zoning text amendment. This is a request, as an applicant initiated, request to amend Section 3.5, Table 3.1, residential uses to permit mixed uses in the highway commercial zoning districts with the standards that are outlined in other mixed use allowances. So I have here where the table that would add for highway commercial the permitted with standards. The mixed use standards are outlined here. We would have to add highway commercial to either not to exceed the floor area devoted to the permitted businesses, or should not exceed twice the floor area of devoted permitted uses. And just for some housekeeping, The no mixed-use building shall exceed 40 feet is in conflict with number 5, which says that no mixed-use building shall exceed the maximum height limit established in 3.9 dimensional requirements 3.2, because the CBD and BD height limits were reduced last year, or 2 years ago.
So that would be 30 feet
Correct.
for highway commercial.
No, it would be 40 feet for highway commercial. It would be, the 30 feet only applies to the BD and the CBD as amended previously. So then this gives you an idea, right now, that anything that's bright red is the highway commercial. So that would be the additions where you could put some mixed use properties. The applicant is most interested in some in areas off of Rob Gandy. I know that we can't make our decision, or your decision rather, on that, but again, it would be for any of the highway commercial areas. That is really what I had. It's a pretty basic request, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
I have one. Is there any instrument right now where an applicant could go through a variance to achieve what they're proposing here?
No. You can't have a variance for a use. Just the standards themselves.
Please review what why someone can request a variance.
You could request a variance from a setback. You could request a variance from, setbacks are one of the most used variances. Almost any dimensional standard you can ask for a variance, but again, the uses, you cannot ask for a variance for the use itself.
What about a special use request process?
It could be, this could be considered a special use if you wanted to add it as a special use. It is,
No,
again, right now, there is no process to have a special use for this type of residential use within the highway commercial.
Okay, so now, when I'm looking at this application, I note that it's said in here, they're especially interested in areas along Rob Gandy, and that they want to expand housing options throughout the city. But I want to be clear again, even if the applicant's especially interested in one area, we're painting a big swath here doing that. I mean, we're saying this is citywide now. It's going to affect everything.
Well,
Correct?
any development within the highway, this would be offer an option in the highway commercial. So this would only be in the highway commercial zoned areas.
Right.
But yes, any highway zone commercial area.
So if Walmart wanted to put condos over their building and it could structurally hold it, if this was allowed, then they could do that.
Yes.
When the application came in, was there conversation about doing it the other way, about asking for a rezoning instead of?
No, there was no conversation asking for a rezoning.
But rezoning would have been a possibility to pursue.
Well, right now there is no project related with this. This is not coming from a project itself. It's just for potential future development that they may consider.
Though if there were a proposed project and they were purchasing the land or already own it and they wanted to do a zoning change, then they could go through that process to see what happens.
Correct.
So I keep going back to the two red areas there. And the Rob Gandy Highway Commercial Zone is a lot different from the highway commercial zone that's coming down into town in our corridor, okay? We've been having discussions about working with the Historic Preservation Commission, starting to talk about what we want our corridor to look like. There's been a lot of conversation about that in the last year or so. So those are two very different areas there. And nobody's saying we don't need additional housing. Absolutely, we need options for that could provide some more affordable types of housing like apartment rentals or smaller townhomes. However, when you're introducing dwellings into highway commercial as a by right permitted use with the current mixed use standards, doesn't create the kind of dialogue and community input that I would think something like this might warrant. We do have currently, Lord, don't strike me for saying the two words, we do have conditional zoning allowed for commercial purpose. It's already in the UDO. Don't anybody throw anything. It's an option that could be exercised, I think. It might be reasonable and helpful to staff, even maybe, to see them maybe bring to our next meeting alternative text changes that might support the addition of mixed-use dwellings there within highway commercial and include some kind of public input process so we can hear from lots more than the folks sitting at this table about that and get that worked in, since we do have, that option is already sitting in our UDO. I think that may be a reasonable option. Anybody else have any remarks on that or thought that?
Sue, were you referring to conditional zoning?
Did I say those two words?
You did not. I did. So the existing conditional zoning in the business district and CBD, would that also relate to highway commercial?
The conditional zoning as written, the new zoning has to follow the existing zoning that it is, the commercial zone or non-residential zoning that is existing on site. So that's where there may be some different dimensionals, but it still follows the underlying zoning that is existing.
I just remain concerned about what could happen in that corridor versus out Rob Gandy. No offense to Rob Gandy. I'm just saying if we are concerned about that corridor, that entryway corridor, and what Fred proposed, I mean, townhomes on the top of Walmart. Convenience in shopping, I'm sure, but throw aesthetics to the wind, I suppose, completely.
It just seems like a rezoning of a piece of property would fit better, because I think this, as it's proposed, is a very, obviously, big brush. And so if they had a project in mind and if they had a parcel they're looking at, then coming back with that and then having a conversation about whether or not that currently zoned highway commercial would be rezoned to something more appropriate for their needs. That's why I was asking the question about the rezoning bit, if they had had that conversation, but.
Is it reasonable, Mo, to look at having two separate groups of standards, two separate requirements for highway commercial for the corridor and other places.
Highway 1, Highway 2. H1, H2, yeah.
I wouldn't recommend that personally. I think that that's causing a lot more confusion. If you want to do that, you could have a brand new zoning district if you wanted to do something similar to that. But I think trying to do separate within the same zoning district, and again, I would also want to talk with Brady, but I don't think that would be advisable just for the semantics of everything that's happening within those, just in general.
This may be off subject, but have we taken into consideration all of the planning for the new building and stuff around here? There is one little thing that sits not too far from here that I was at back in 1969 when we built that. Southport area was built on the PSAR, the preliminary safety analysis, only 10,000 residents. And we keep adding more and more. And if we ever have a 3 Mile Island over here, how many will get out? Just a little food for thought.
And I agree. And the other side of it is that mixed uses are becoming more and more logical. I mean, somebody said, can you imagine residences on top of Walmart? I'd love to see residences on top of Walmart rather than just have Walmart out there, because I think people who live there are going to want something nicer than an asphalt parking lot. I look at what's happening as land gets more expensive and people, more and more of them, and I don't know how to get around, 3 Mile Island and Sunny Point. I mean, you pick your choice. But at the same time, the core of Southport is not what we see out there on 211, and we never will see it out there. But just row after row of offices, commercial, with no mixed-in residential. I look at Mayfair, okay, in Wilmington. It's a mixed use. You have shops downstairs, you have restaurants downstairs, and in Leland they're doing the same thing, and up above them they have residences. Will it happen out here in that little area that we have in highway commercial? I don't know that it will. But I would be tickled if somebody came in and said, we want to do a mixed use out there. And will this protect us? Will this keep those people who want to make a village out there in a commercial area from coming here? These are questions I don't know. I'm intrigued about, do we really want any more people down here? But at the same time, they're coming. So you're talking about a mixture of residential options. And I'm intrigued by this. I'm not sure it's there, but I'm really intrigued that this really, outside of the core of Southport, we need to be thinking out of the box maybe. And maybe this is it. Like I say, I can see both sides of it. And I can see what other municipalities are leaning towards to get that mixed use where you can live upstairs, walk downstairs and shop, or go to your office and come back upstairs and never get in your car. Will that happen here? I think it could. I don't know. But would this would this facilitate that thinking? Or do they still have to go through special zoning and all?
If this was an allowed use, depending on the number of residential units, it would still require approval by the planning board as a major site plan. So if it has more than 4 dwelling units, it would have to come before this board for approval and meet all of, and also, regardless, they would all have to meet all of the dimensional standards that are laid out within the UDO prior to construction.
Muddy the waters.
And just to confirm, you don't have any information from this applicant on any intentions at all?
I do not. And the applicant, there were some health issues. That's why the applicant is not here tonight.
It talks a little bit about in the application. It says, while the applicant is most interested in the parcels along Rob Gandy. And I think that's what they're focused on, but.
Either way.
So, Mo, as I understand it, this would be citywide, not just that property.
Yes, anywhere that's zoned highway commercial, yes.
Highway commercial.
Yes.
Which has the most safeguards versus if we do it this way and allow the amendment versus a special use permit and/or using conditional zoning? I mean, which has the best balance for the overall benefit of what may need to happen versus the city of Southport and what we'd like to see happen?
Several different things. So if you leave it the way that they have it as a permitted use, could come forward. If it was less than the 4 dwelling units, it could be built. It would have to meet all of the standards. It would just be it would be a minor site plan at that point. So it would be administrative by staff. If then it would go over the 4, they would have to come, meet all the standards again. It is added parking. It's parking in addition to what is required for the commercial. So that then would become a major site plan that would then be heard before the planning board. To consider a special use, they would have standards and then the Board of Adjustment. It'd be a quasi-judicial hearing then at that point rather than an administrative at the major site plan.
And that would only deal with that parcel?
And it would be with that parcel only. So that could be another place where if it was a special use with standards, then it would then have to go to the Board of Adjustment for their discussion and approval before it comes before to get a building permit. And then CZ.
Okay.
Would that bypass the planning board and the Board of Aldermen?
It depends on how you write it. Or if it's a permitted, a special use with standards, they would have to go to the Board of Adjustments. If it was over the 4 units, they would still have to come forward with a major site plan review. So that would be then the decision by the planning board. It would never go to the Board of Aldermen for their approval.
So if it was 4 units, it would bypass 4 units or less.
No. If 4 units triggers the major site plan.
So if it was 3,
Yes.
Question, is some of the concern about the height of these structures that may roll up there?
No, I think
40 feet.
It's going to be 40 feet.
40 feet would be the maximum height within the highway commercial.
Well, and I'm looking at this, and I'm thinking 40 feet, but I'm also thinking commercial, and then 2 stories of residential on top. And then I'm thinking about project that we have that's on standby right now. And we don't have anybody here who could tell us other than that's what they want to do. So one of the big concerns I have is not only the safety like Donnie talked about, but how much could this possibly outpace our infrastructure to the point that we could not keep up, we could actually collapse it. That's something that, because we have no idea any type of proposal except that they just want to put it in there. And that's something we really need to look at is because right now we're going through so many changes with our infrastructure that we need some type of, I think we need some type of idea as to what we're looking at. I mean, I'm not saying we need a site plan, but I mean, we need something to kind of go by other than they just want to do it, because with highway commercial, I know that you can put any type of business in highway commercial that you want to. I mean, if you want to just, have 300 pinwheel stores, you could do it. I mean, you could put boat dealerships, you could put anything you want to in there. And this could drastically change everything about this area, not just our corridor, but just the area in general. That could be it could be something that is like Mayfair, that is well put together, but it could also be something like Myrtle Beach that we don't really want. I mean, we kind of need some answers, I think, that would help out.
Is there something tied to this zoning text amendment? Is there a project tied to this?
If there is, I'm not aware of it, and it has not been discussed with me.
So we're like the deal with Bald Head Island, deals that were made 40 years ago and now they're coming up? If we don't have something tied to it, why change it? Because I don't think this will be the last time it'll be changed. Because builders sometimes see things that planning boards and aldermen don't see, that it's a big problem. And when they bring it, it's a specific issue and we can rule on it. But this,
It seems like a mighty wide brushstroke for one hypothetical project.
Yeah, and I agree, Fred, with you on that, and that why do something that's going to affect the whole city when you're talking about one project, which we don't even know what the project is, when there's alternatives for them to be able to develop that with more scrutiny to benefit both them and the city. So why do you even consider it at all? Just my thoughts.
What other comments, questions for Mo? I sound like a broken record here, but do we need a motion to set this submitted text amendment aside to get more information, maybe be able to actually see the applicant, talk with them, see what the intentions are for this?
Yeah.
I recommend that we do. So move.
Thank you, Donnie. We have a motion and a second.
Second.
Will seconds it. Have a motion on the floor and seconded. Any final discussion regarding this item? We're going to set this submitted text amendment aside for additional review and a chance to potentially meet with the applicant and see what the intentions are.
And I'd also like to add to that motion, if I could, that we, as we are going through these studies with infrastructure as well, that we look at those numbers as well to see how that's going to correlate with the possible amount of acreage that's going to be affected here, possible amount of population that could be added to this area.
That's a long amendment to that motion.
Yeah, I know. I was just.
Is that something, Mo, if we act on the motion and then ask staff to look at the implications on the infrastructure with the consideration of our water sewer merger going through, it may be something we need to discuss with the county folks about what implications, what problems it could trigger for us with this type of building coming at us, or the potential for it. Like I say, I think it'd be nice to talk with the applicant and see what they got in mind. So we're acting on the first motion. I'm not trying to take your long-winded amendment away, but to just set it aside for additional consideration and information from the applicant.
Mr. Chair, real quickly, can I make a substitute motion just to deny this at this time? Don't table it, but just deny it at this time? Because it may be 2, 3, 4 years before somebody comes in here and nobody will know that this was ever tabled. So I'm just suggesting, y'all, but if we just deny it, then we don't have to worry about it.
Mo, do you want to address that?
Yes, I just want to remind you that this is a legislative item, so you would be making a recommendation to the Board of Aldermen for the denial, just for clarification.
Well, Madam Chairman, I make a recommendation that we deny this text amendment and send it on to the Board of Aldermen.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? I don't think we didn't carry it forward any further. We'll back up to the initial motion. Thank you. Let's back up to that one then. We did have a motion on the floor to table this for further consideration and for meeting with the applicant and getting additional information, and it was seconded. Any additional conversation on that? All in favor? All opposed? No, we're separating. We're not voting on the amendment that Roy brought up. I want to be sure everybody understands. Roy's amendment is to deny it. So this amendment tables it for additional conversation. All in favor?
To table it?
To table it.
Yeah, aye.
Okay. Any opposed? We had a motion on the floor to table it, and we did not finish out the vote on that. You brought an amended motion to the floor.
So are we voting on the amended? We're not. We're voting to table it.
We're voting to table it. We had that motion on the floor.
Does that mean denying it goes away?
Yes, sir.
Until the next meeting.
All right. Pleasure of the board.
Any in opposition? And that is your prerogative to do that, Roy. Thank you. Motion passes. It is tabled until our next meeting. And Mo, in the meantime, if we can get some information on the infrastructure, if that's going to be an issue, and hopefully we'll have communications with that applicant. They're better to be able to attend that meeting. Thank you, folks. That was another good discussion. Our last item of new business is a zoning map amendment for 558 Jabbertown Road. Mo.
Our last item this evening is a proposal for a rezoning. We have got a request to rezone a property that is approximately 7 acres in total size, which the change would be for approximately 6.5 of those acres from light industrial to mobile home. Currently, the property is just over half an acre that is adjacent to Jabbertown is already zoned as mobile home. Give you a better look. These are kind of blurry, but this is the future land use map, and this is the current zoning map. So if you can see here, this is the portion of the lot that is zoned mobile home, and then this is the light industrial section they would like to change to mobile home. On the future land use map, it is zoned high density or medium density and low density residential. So the medium density is approximately 3 to 4 units per acre, and the low is 2 to 3 units per acre. So that's just an overview of those two things, just to give you an idea. This is just the use table, and I only included the residential portion because if it's the changes only affect the residential uses from light industrial to the mobile home, because it would be removing all of the non-residential from that. So I'll just bring you back to the zoning map, and like I said, this is taking a light industrial non-residential portion to a less intensive residential unit section. The mobile home, I would say that the minimum lot size is 5,000 square feet. The minimum frontage is 50 feet, and it requires a front setback of 20 feet, a rear setback of 20 feet, and side setbacks of 4 feet. And we do have one of the applicants here to speak, Andrew. He can answer any questions as well after any questions you have for me. Or if you would like to hear from him prior to that, that's fine as well.
We can go ahead and do that, Mr. Lang, if you'd like to address the board.
Thank you, Board. Yeah, so we're...
If you give your name and address for the
Yes.
record, please. Thank you.
Andrew Lang, 6217 Pebble Shore Lane, Southport. So we're attempting to rezone from the light industrial to the manufactured housing zoning. This will allow also for stick-built homes as well. The front portion of this lot is already MH zoned, so we'd like to just continue that zoning all the way back with the rest of the acreage. And on the west side, like Mo had mentioned, there's the MH zoned property there already. And on the other side is, there's a PUD on that side. And on the north side of this parcel, there's also a PUD, proposed PUD as well on the east side of this parcel. And on the west side is R20, just to give you a lay of the land around this parcel here. We think it's a great candidate for rezoning. And as we all know, there are a lot of large lots here in Southport. Homes are, I'd say, relatively expensive. This would provide an opportunity for smaller lots, smaller sized homes that could be less expensive than most here in Southport. And I can take any questions.
A couple for you. Is any of that in a flood zone?
We had a wetlands delineation done. Everything looks pretty good for this parcel. So that's what I do know right now.
And are there any examples that you've already built that are like what you're talking about?
We have some ideas, but nothing set in stone. We just started working on this project, but I think homes between the size of maybe 1,200 to 1,500 square feet would probably make the most sense on these lots.
Will this site be accessible from Rob Gandy or from Jabbertown Road?
Jabbertown.
Is that down where the trailer park is already there?
Yes, that's right on the west side there of this parcel. Yeah, right next door.
Okay.
Yeah. And the Prices Creek, the PUD, on the other side, right on the other side.
Is this the existing trailer park, mobile home park?
It's vacant land right now.
Please show me again. I'm totally confused on where this is, because what it looked like the description was the industrial was where the trailer park is. And that...
Yeah, you wanna, yeah.
Yeah, that's an existing trailer.
It is adjacent to the mobile home park, so the mobile, or the manufactured housing park that is there, it's got a funny shape. So it cuts up into, I don't have I'm afraid I don't have the tax map that shows it, but it is kind of like a flag lot. So it opens up on Jabbertown and curves out. And if I may, I can show you better on this. Yes, it's a flag lot, so that the mobile home park that is existing comes off of Jabbertown, but then opens up, and then this wraps around that.
Okay, so the mobile home park is zoned...
Mobile home.
It's the same shade as what we're trying to get zoned mobile home.
Industrial.
I'm sorry, I'm just having... And I couldn't see when driving by, you can't tell. No, I have no problems with this. I'm just trying to figure out what the property is. It looked like to me that it was an existing mobile home park that y'all were going to get rid of, which didn't bother me. But okay, all right, I understand much better now. Thank you.
I do know this parcel is too small to become a PUD. Otherwise, we may have gone that direction, but it's too small. Yep.
Where is it in relation to the three new builds that are on Jabbertown? They're all the same square footage and so forth?
Yeah, so that's very close. It's just a few lots down, and that was also MH zone land that they put those houses on.
And aesthetically, are you looking at those same type houses again to use for you said stick built, you're talking about changing, you would not use that kind of construction on those homes like those others close by?
I think if it worked out for us, stick built is what we would prefer to do, but I mean, I think this is more about the zoning per se, but you know, we haven't gone into exactly what we'd like to do, but I would say we were certainly leaning that direction.
We really can't discuss any one specific direction here because we have to consider all usages under this. So we really can't hold you. Tomorrow you can sell it and after it's rezoned. So we have to look at the rezoning and all the usages that would be permitted.
Correct, yes.
You know, we appreciate what you're saying here, but we really.
Yeah. I think it's just more about, does light industrial make sense in that area? And we believe that it doesn't. So that's why we're going for the rezoning.
Is Ron Greger involved with this project?
Yes, he is.
He's a partner?
Correct.
Will notices be sent out to all the residents of Jabbertown Road about this coming in?
Adjacent property owners would be informed during the, prior to the public hearing that will be held by the Board of Aldermen.
Okay.
Mo, I have a question for you. On the rezoning application, it says $500. Is that correct?
I can explain. They originally were only going to rezone a portion of that property, which is not always advised. You don't want to have a dual zoned property, and at the last moment they asked if they could include the whole property, and I allowed that, yes.
Mo, another question. At what point does it trigger two entrances to a property? Because it looks like sort of the northwest, it's landlocked in a way. I'm looking at the GIS map and seeing that while the corner touches Jabbertown. I'm sorry, the corner touches Rob Gandy. I just didn't know at what point.
That is determined by the number of lots and units that are placed, not on the size of the property.
What number is that?
I believe it is 50 in our UDO. The state statute is 100, but we have it at.
So 50 no matter what? Whether it's a mobile home or whether it's a stick-built house, it's still 50?
Yes.
Okay.
So, Mo, I'm curious, why would you not have increased the fee per the schedule?
I will go back and get the fee. I will go back and get the fee, Fred, for board member.
We have no problem paying the fee.
Than anything. Part of it's already, you already have you have a mobile park there with roughly, not what you're building, but adjacent to it, right? How many mobile homes are in there now? Do you know, just roughly?
I honestly do not know.
And then what's the intent for if the zoning goes through, what's the intent? Have you ballparked how many mobile homes you want versus how many stick-built homes you're going to put in there?
GIS has 21 mobile homes in that current property.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to the lot size. It's hard to say how many we can put in there, but yeah, I mean, the mobile home park next to us, it was 21? Was it 21? 21? Okay. Yeah, I would say close to that number, but I don't have a definite answer.
No, ballpark.
Yeah.
Figure if you're investing the money and the time to rezone it, you've given some contemplation to what you're going to do. And I was just trying to get a ballpark as to the number of homes that are coming in, just to have an idea for that area and the whole impact.
Yep, I would say 21's a good rough number.
And that's for the mobile homes, and then for the stick-built homes.
Yes, I mean, so we're just speaking about the zoning, but if we're going to lean one direction right now, we probably would not do any manufactured houses.
Other questions?
Hey, I have one more. So, talking about affordable housing, what do you see the price point being?
I would say just a 12 to 1,500 square foot house. So, I mean, I hate to give numbers, but I would say give or take 300 probably would make sense.
Are there open space requirements for mobile home parcels?
If this would have to become a subdivision, they'd have to subdivide it into individual lots, so then there would be open space requirements.
And you did say about between 12 to 1,500 square feet, 300,000.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. We're not doing the project right now, but just looking at some comps around the area, I would say somewhere around there for that size of house on that size of a lot.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
I have one question for Mo, so just so that I can understand this. So it's one parcel right now, and we're talking about lots, so we are subdividing.
It's rezoning the large parcel. If you left it at one parcel, you could put one primary structure on the parcel. So when they're talking about wanting to add structures, then you would then have to go to subdivide it. This is all speculation. Right now, we are asking, the applicant rather, is asking for a zoning change.
Are there other questions or comments? What is the board's pleasure on this request?
I move that we approve the request.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is on the floor with a second. Any final discussion?
Mo, can you just discuss the process of what a rezoning of a property looks like, where the application is, the approval, when it goes to the planning board, when notices get sent out, and kind of, I think, so everyone understands?
Yes, and I was going to ask, so this, again, is like a text amendment, then you will be making a recommendation of approval to the Board of Aldermen. So then you also will need to adopt a consistency statement to send up to the Board of Aldermen as well. So then at the Board of Aldermen meeting, they will hear this request, call for a public hearing. At that point, then the property owners would be notified. The property would then also be noticed. There would be a sign out in front. And then they would have a public hearing at the next meeting. Then the next month, the board would then make their decision on the rezoning.
And so, look, ask a question. There was not a consistency statement included in the packet. Did I miss that?
I believe there was, but
was there? I'm sorry.
There is, I see it.
I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. Mine did not print, or maybe I missed it. Back up one page, I believe. There it is. Okay. Any further discussion on the motion on the floor? Thank you, Chris, for asking for that clarification. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? And Roy, who made the motion? Roy made the motion. Would you be willing to read this consistency statement into our record for it to move forward to the Board of Aldermen, please?
Statement of consistency and recommendation. City of Southport Planning Board hereby recommends adoption of the proposed zoning map amendment to the Board of Aldermen and finds that it is consistent with the city's 2014 Kama-Core Land Use Plan originally adopted November 13, 2014, and subsequently amended by the Southport Board of Aldermen. More specifically, the proposed amendment is consistent with Policy 2.4. Southport will permit residential development to occur in response to market needs, provided the following criteria met. 1, due respect is offered to all aspects of the environment. And 2, concurrent planning for improvements to community facilities, infrastructure, and services provided. Further, the Planning Board finds that the proposed text amendment is reasonable due to the size, physical conditions, and other attributes of the area. This statement and motion were seconded and passed.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so we'll get that prepared for the board then. Thank you, Mary. That concludes our new business for the evening. Our only matter under other business is an update on the comprehensive plan revision. Mo.
This will be short and sweet. The Board of Aldermen approved that we could move forward with negotiations and contract negotiations with Stewart, which is a land use plan consulting group out of Raleigh. They work mainly with mid and smaller sized communities, and we felt that they really fit the needs for City of Southport and will do a great job. And they've got a really great public outreach program that they make sure that they cater to the needs of each community. That we felt that was great. So I just wanted to let you know that, so that'll be going to the Board of Aldermen, and anticipate that that'll start, probably the kickoff itself will probably be at the beginning of 24. We'll hopefully be doing some background information gathering with them in December so that we can really get on the ground running in January.
Any questions on this?
So for the full time frame for it to finish, what do you anticipate?
They are looking at approximately 14 to 16 months for the finished product, and that is not adoption or certification by the Coastal Resources Commission.
Any other questions? Thank you, ma'am. Or other items to be brought before the board tonight? No additional business. We'll advance to announcements. Any announcements? I'll refer everybody to the city website for information on Halloween activities that have been planned by Parks and Rec. The Spook or Treat is October 27th at 6 p.m. and the Trunk or Treat at the fire department then is on Halloween evening at 5 p.m. there. Anyone else with any announcements? Your members' attendance chart and roster closes out your packets for this evening. And now, with no other business, can I get a motion that we adjourn? Second. Motion is on the floor. Any final discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Gentlemen, we are adjourned at 8:17. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Good night.